My name is Julia Ioffe. I'm a writer at The Atlantic. On two sides of me, we have some fantastic Russian journalists, Alexey Kovalev, who used to work at the Russian state news agency, Riga Novosti, where he ran a site focused on translating foreign news. He's now at the Moscow Times, an English language paper in Moscow, and he runs a project called The Noodle Remover, which comes from the Russian phrase to hang noodles on somebody's ears when you're misleading them. It's a site dedicated to kind of debunking fake news, disinformation in the Russian media. To my left is Galina Timchenko, who's the head of Meduza. It is a Russian language publication based in Latvia in order to get away from the creepy crawly fingers of the Russian government censors. Until 2014, she was the storied editor of lenta.ru, which was the most popular Russian news site until she was forced out for political reasons and the whole staff resigned with her. And Meduza's now doing great. They have a fantastic English language newsletter, which you should all sign up for. It's meduza.io. It should be in your programs. /en, but definitely sign up for it. It's a really good, you get it every morning. It's a really good window into what's happening in Russia today. So we're going to start by talking about what the situation is like for the press in Russia, about how the government presses it, because it's not as overt as we might think it is in the States, how the Kremlin presses on the media, how the media protects itself, how it censors itself to avoid getting pressed on, and what the state of the Russian media is today. Very broad question. Take it away, Galia.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. And yesterday I have heard some lection about bad habit of coffee, but it's no chance to survive here with nine hours jet lag. So speaking about the situation with media in Russia, you know, we are in the final phase of killing independent media, because maybe 8 years ago, Vladimir Putin started to put media on pressure. He started with TV channels. So TV channels transfer under total control of Kremlin. Then newspapers, and then the eye of Sauron turned on internet and internet media. So now we have only few independent media, and Kremlin has great version of tools to kill us. For example, media is not the main business for owners in Russia as usual. So Russian oligarchs have their main business, for example, its metal business or its financial business or anything else. And their tiny business with media, because media is non-high profit business. So Kremlin put the main business on pressure, and I have my own experience, because when I was editor-in-chief of lenta.ru, my owner of our holding was the richest man in Russia, Vladimir Potanin, who owns Norilsky Nickel. And he said to me directly, if I can see a shadow of threat to my main business, I'll just smash your media like this. So it's the main tool. The owners is the great threat to media, unfortunately. Next tool is to deal with our advertisers. And we have some examples of pressing through advertisers. Kremlin administration just called to main advertisers and to ask not to put advertisement in this media. For example, independent TV channel TV Rain was almost closed because of this pressure of advertisers.
And then it's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but then it's made to look like, oh, well, these are just economic reasons. The Kremlin had nothing to do with it, right?
Absolutely. It's just economical reasons, they said. And the last but not least tool is to deal with corrupted editors-in-chief. So they have special offers for these editors-in-chief, special invitation to special closed briefings, special traveling benefits, and some exclusive themes. And it's some kind of maybe exchange. You will put these topics on the stop list, and I'll give you an exclusive topic next time. And you know, it's not a secret that every Friday at the 14th building inside Kremlin, it called house number 14. There are some meeting with Kremlin administration. Editors-in-chief gets lists of topics called temnik. You know, tema is topic, agenda in Russia. Theme, yeah. They get some lists of topic with directions how to cover this or that topic. And everybody
like talking
is okay.
points.
Yeah, talking points. Everybody is okay with that.
So, and that gets into the question of self-censorship within the organizations themselves. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, self-censorship, unfortunately, is very usual practice in Russian media. For example, Meduza, we covered the change of editor-in-chief of one of the main Russian news outlet. And new editor-in-chief gathered all the staff in the room and said, okay, guys, we have double line traffic double line, and you should not cross this
dividing
double
line.
Dividing line.
Yeah.
Dividing line. Yeah, it's called. You should not cross. This divided line lies near Kremlin's administration, near Putin's family, near his business, and near business of his friends. You should not cross, and you will be okay.
And people abide by that.
Yeah, yeah. Some journalists resigned in a protest, but it was maybe less than 10% of stuff.
And Alexey, you've seen we've talked about this, how in the Riga headquarters where Russia Today, which has gotten a lot of attention recently, it was mentioned in the intelligence report put out by the American intelligence community in January, that Russia Today was this big engine of disinformation that really affected how our election was covered. You have some thoughts about this?
Yeah, so in central Moscow, there's this huge brutalist building on Zubovsky Boulevard, number 4, built originally as the press center for the 1980 Moscow Olympics. And there were several news organizations based in that building. I worked for one.
All Kremlin-owned, right?
Yes. I worked for one. It was the biggest state news agency, RIA Novosti. And on floor 4, there was our biggest rival, RT, as it was known already at the time, or Russia Today, a TV channel founded in 2005 by two of Kremlin's biggest media moguls. One is dead now, Mikhail Lesin, the former minister of press, who died under very mysterious circumstances in central DC.
In Washington, yeah.
The other is Putin's deputy chief of staff. And it's his, it's not part of his job description, but this deputy chief of staffs have traditionally managed the media, both under Putin's administration, like 3 of them, and in Yeltsin's times. And it's his, they manage the media in a in Russia in a very literate way. So you have this guy in Putin's administration. You can pick up the phone, spend 3 minutes phoning all the editors-in-chief of all the federal TV networks, and instruct them how to cover a certain topic, or how not to cover it at all. And it used to, and for a while, it did work, because even with the internet penetration in Russia at about 70% now, For the majority of Russians, TV is still the major, if not the only, source of news. So we had RIA Novosti on one floor and RT on the other, and there was a lot of rivalry inside that building, both for state budgets, because we both relied on the Russian Ministry of Finance, and on Mr. Gromov's good graces, who is Putin's deputy chief of staff, because it's his decision who gets how much. And in the end, yeah, RT won this.
Huge budget.
Yeah. Well, like we never expected this to happen to us, because we worked for a state news agency. I was one handshake away from Putin, but apparently that was not enough, because we were trying to do what we saw our mission as journalists first, not. But that went against the Mr. Gromov's and other Kremlin's media managers' vision of what journalism is, because they have said that on a number of times publicly and on record that they see journalists working for state-owned publications as public servants first and journalists second, if at all. So we never expected to happen this to us, although we saw it happening all around us. Like Galina Timchenko's Lenta.ru was subjected to a hostile takeover by a loyalist editorial team. But the same thing happened to us, to a state-owned news publication, the biggest news agency in the country. So one day we were on our way to work, and then Twitter was exploding with questions of what's happening at RIA Novosti. And then we saw the executive order on the Kremlin's website. Putin signed an order in December 2013, effectively liquidating RIA Novosti and merging it with in a huge state-owned media conglomerate, now very confusingly known as Россия сегодня, which is translated as Russia Today, although it's not formally related to the TV channel RT. So it's now, yes, if they replaced the entire executive team of the agency with extreme and very vocal Putin loyalists, and that's how it's been since then. There are certain subjects that the agency won't even touch without express approval from the Kremlin's administration. And when I'm asked, we're getting to this later, like what kind of advice can I give my American colleagues? But I'm realizing how much is different, like how much freedom and protection you guys are enjoying that we cannot even think of. Like the First Amendment, like we have an article like that in the Russian Constitution, but at this point, Russian Constitution isn't worth the paper it's printed on.
So, yeah, we're listening to these two fine speakers at a really grim time in Russian media. And as you've heard, I mean, this is the toolkit that the Kremlin has at its disposal. Is massive, and it's very, very diverse, from overt pressure to very subtle psychological pressure, where the journalists do the work themselves without the Kremlin ever having to ask. So how do you, as journalists, as an editor, how do you survive in this environment?
I have some kind of unique experience, because when I was fired and 77 from 84 of my staff resigned in a protest after my firing, then I decided just go away from their field, from their playing field. And I registered media company inside European Union. So now I'm foreign media, Russian language foreign media, who has 70% of Russian audience. But we managed to survive. We were very silly. We were almost idiots, because we started Meduza in 2014, and 2014 was the crisis year of Russia. When we started, ruble was, for example, 40.
40 rubles to the dollar.
40 rubles for the dollar, and after 2 months it was 100. So but we managed to survive, and we are commercial organization, but it's some kind of unique experience. But nowadays, I realize, that a Russian government trying to smash all foreign media, Russian language foreign media, because this week, upper house of Russian parliament, they initiate some law and they put foreign media with Russian language version on a special list of foreign agents who should register as a foreign agents and who should give all their financial sources and all financial reports as a foreign agents inside Russia. So this pressure is just continuing.
Yeah. How about you? How do you survive?
Well, I'm working for a newspaper that's about to fold in about 2 weeks. Yeah, it's tough times, but also exciting new opportunities, of course. And there's also the more you look on the surface, the more grim it seems. But then, if you look deeper, you have these very small-time, almost amateur publications disengaging themselves from the news agenda, because what's the most damaging, and I'm sure that will strike close to home, is that these people in the Kremlin's administration, they don't always have to rely on coercion, like on direct orders to cover this, don't cover that. All they have to do is just keep you constantly on the edge and dictate the agenda in terms of the most mundane, minute statements by anyone close to Putin. Some ex-senators, people nowhere near any decision-making, are catapulted to top news by hundreds of these loyalist publications, and you feel compelled, like everybody's covering this nonsensical statement by Putin, so should we, because we have to rely on web traffic. We have to cover what everyone else is covering.
That doesn't sound at all familiar. Okay, go on.
So the one way of surviving in Putin's Russia as a media organization is specialization. Because I'm seeing many excellent publications run by my friends and colleagues who are just picking a subject and sticking to it, like covering just the court cases. Because general interest publications cannot follow even the most high-profile case all the way from the initial hearings to the verdict, because they don't have enough staff and they don't have enough resources to cover even the most high-profile cases. But a specialized publication can afford to do that if it just doesn't cover every single banality coming out of the Kremlin, which is what all the rest feel compelled to do.
So this year, Americans discovered disinformation, fake news. You, as Russian journalists, have been dealing with this for at least a decade. So tell us how it works.
We deal with fake news when it was not so fashionable, so maybe for decades. Please remember 90s and Boris Yeltsin. Our president is working with documents, which means he is just sleeping or he is terminally ill. So, we had been working with a fake agenda for years. And frankly, I have no unique advice, but I have maybe 2 or 3 rules. At first, you should not give them a dime for the exchange. You should stand on your line, and you should know shouldn't have to hesitate. You should stand for your ideas on this line, not a step behind. you know, at first. Second,
so none of this on, some people think this and some people think this.
Absolutely, because the main Kremlin's idea, and unfortunately they won, that there is no truth at all. Everybody has his own truth. And after 10 years dealing with such agenda, I saw this point of view at many journalists and editors. They say, oh, there is no truth at all. I say, guys, you just repeated Kremlin's propaganda. There is truth, and we know it for sure. So second
Which also means, sorry to interrupt, it also means there's no such thing as a provable fact.
Absolutely.
Which means there's no such thing as journalistic objectivity. Therefore, we don't have to take you seriously.
Second, we prefer to deal with news agenda, and we are pretending that Kremlin's pressure does not exist at all, because if you do your job, looking in every place, is there dangerous? Is there dangerous? Is it dangerous? Is it dangerous? You have no chance to deal with real agenda. You have to pretend that this pressure does not exist at all. And the third part, we prefer to laugh on them, because Russia is full of fear. People are scared. People are scared. So we are trying to be very informative, but we're trying to entertain people. For example, the most popular publications on our site, not just big investigations or great interviews, but we do some kind of news gaming. For example, every movement of Putin has special words from his press secretary. You know, and your press secretary will like to say the same thing. And for example, Putin signed some law. Journalists asking of press secretary what it's all about, and press secretary likes to say, I do not know. Putin does not know. I do not know. Does Putin know or not? So we made special game to guess what was the reaction of Putin's press secretary on the concrete event.
The game of denials.
Yeah, game of denials. Or, you know, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs like to say it's absurd or it's nonsense. And we gave examples of, for example, deals with America or events in Syria, and you should guess how did Mr. Sergei Lavrov call it, nonsense or absurd?
Alexey, how does it work? How does fake? I mean, I know you don't like this term, but
it's the most overused term. It's the term that's lost its meaning in the quickest way possible. The buzzword that I really despise now. But
what would you rather call it?
Okay, there's it's not as much of the fake news as completely made up pieces of information concocted with a clear intention to deceive, and not so much a problem as genuine news that have no informational value at all, like these endless repetitions of every Putin's nonsensical statement, and I'm sure it's going to ring a lot of bells. Tweets from one of the former senators, who's kind of a non-celebrity, because he said something that may or may not be true, but why should we even care? Why is it in the headlines? Why is it top news? Mm-hmm. So this is the danger that I think is not very Russia-specific. But fake news, yeah, I've seen it from the inside, and I can assure you that in the run-up to the 2016 elections in the United States, Russian media regurgitated far more fake news, like genuine fake news, concocted by American homegrown, the so-called satirical websites, then reported as fact on Russian TV. Of course, every...
Do you have an example?
Well, obviously, with the Sunday summary news show, breathlessly reported every attack piece coming out of the States about Hillary Clinton's health, her mental capacity, or her fitness to govern, and that sort of thing. And
the FBI story was good. This is, by the way, this is the Sunday news show. It's one of the most popular shows on Russian TV. It's hosted by a guy who's, I guess, kind of analogous to Bill O'Reilly.
But he used to be just a decade back then. He was a vocal liberal, and there are famous clips of him on YouTube, like explaining very earnestly what liberal values mean to him. And now he's the most toxic TV pundit. Like, I don't know, I think Sean Hannity may be on steroids. And he has a very theatrical delivery. He's called Dmitry the Jazz Hands.
Let's put nuclear ashes to America.
Yeah.
What was that? So the FBI story.
Yeah. So a week before November 20, he spent a 10-minute. It was a 10-minute segment on his Sunday summary news show with a big, what is called Chiron. Yeah. Is Trump about to be assassinated by the FBI for his principled stance on Russia? He spent 10 minutes discussing that. Is Donald Trump going to be assassinated a week before the election?
Well, is he? Is he?
Well, he made some very compelling arguments.
So, tell us how noodle remover works.
Okay, so I started out as I was horrified by what my former workplace was turning into, because I still had my name and bio attached to it on the website, the news agency I was working for, because well, the quality just sharply dropped, because you cannot really have both complete control over the media and quality coverage. And as I just started sharing my dismay with my former colleagues and documenting them on my Facebook first, but then I realized that the problem was much bigger, that we didn't even have a culture of fact-checking in Russia. Very few publications can even afford like a full-time fact-checker, but most don't even bother. And it's extremely easy to just put out anything you want, absolutely, because there will be no one to challenge you. You can claim whatever on air, and very few people will care and speak out publicly. So I decided, why don't I do just that? Then I realized that I was completely out of my depth, because I'm competing against a state-owned industry funded to the tune of $1.5 billion a year. And I'll never in my life debunk even 1/10 of all the filth that's being put out there. So I gradually switched over to explaining the inner workings of the media, how media work in general, how different biases affect both reporters and editors and the audience, so that people can filter out anything from 100% fake news, mostly about favorite ones are about Russia's miraculous military power. So we have a lot of fake news about that, reported as fact without a hint of irony. For example, that a Russian fighter in the Black Sea used the state-of-the-art electronic warfare on USS Donald Cook and just completely switched it off. Like a fighter bust by a US destroyer in the Black Sea and just switched it off. And they will discuss it, and they will invite experts on there in discussing this as if this were like as if it happened.
So let me ask, again, we Americans have been talking a lot about Russia Today, about fake news, about the Russian influence in fake news. What do you think we don't understand? What do we get wrong? What do we get right?
Let me tell about what's wrong. You know, I never saw a person who is watching Russia Today for real. Why do you think that it's so influential? It's absolutely fake numbers of audience, absolutely fake numbers of their influential or their influence into United States. You know, chief of Russia Today, Margarita Simonyan, she switched to different numbers in every interview. At one point, she focused on YouTube views. Second point, on housing in United States, who is connected with Russia Today. Third, their outreach in social media. There is no real numbers of their audience because, for example, Meduza has maybe 7.3 million unique users per month, and it's compared to real Russia Today numbers. Do you know Meduza? No. Do you know Russia Today? Yes. What is all about? It's all about propaganda. You are victims of their fake agenda, their fake propaganda. They are not so influential in the United States.
Okay, can I have a show of hands, please? How many of you have watched the TV network RT for more than a minute?
One.
Okay. Okay. And so I really don't understand why the U.S. intelligence community thinks RT is so influential or dangerous. I mean, it's not. And I
well,
will.
In the DNI report, it said that their ratings might not be so stellar, but they get all their traffic, they get all their views on YouTube.
That is also very misleading because they just accepted at face value RT's own self-aggrandizement because what RT does, I've been watching it very closely for hours on end for the past several months, and when you switch it on, as you're flicking it through the channels on your remote in a hotel room, you'll eventually stumble on a channel, on a TV channel that's its feel and it looks and its studios and its anchors are all very generic. So it could be any rolling news channel anywhere with presenters speaking impeccable English, and most of them are, by the way, native English speakers, and it's very bland. It's if you just randomly watching it, there's nothing that screams, we are doing Putin's bidding by indoctrinating foreigners into his. That's not how it works. You know, Putin is barely even mentioned on RT.
So how does it work?
If it works. Well, so very broadly, in very broad strokes, the point of RT is that Russia and its client states are never to blame for anything. The collective West, which is apparently a centrally managed and ideologically homogenic entity, is to blame for everything. And if there's incontrovertible evidence that Russia is indeed to blame for something, please let's look the other way, because there's Guantanamo, and there are human rights abuses in Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera. Please look the other way. Whatever you heard of Russia, please ignore that and look the other way. And that's the general idea. But for the majority of people working there, I'm pretty good friends with some people working at RT. Well, most of them don't even realize what they're doing. It's a job like any else. They're not an army of. Well, I'm very counterintuitively, I will speak in RT's defense because it does employ some professional reporters and editors.
Which is a big deal in Russia today, given what we heard, right?
Yeah.
That there's not many places left to work for Russia.
This is the very important point because at some point they are very aggressively hiring, and especially among English-speaking expats in Moscow.
Okay, we're going to go to Q&A real quick, but very quickly, the U.S. media is entering has entered a very nervous, self-questioning time. They don't know how to deal with a president like Trump, with the fake news. Having dealt with it in Russia, what advice do you have for your American colleagues?
Stop fidgeting. If you're brave enough, everything will be okay. Please follow the standards. You have these standards. We in Russia in 90s, we just established these standards, and we have not a long period of following these standards, but Americans media has more than 100 years of standards and moral and ethic principles. Just follow these standards.
Yeah, there is a lot of fear. The bravery question is interesting.
Yeah.
Because American journalists have a lot to lose and they're immediately scared and they want access, whereas Russian journalists have already given up a lot.
It's a trap. Yeah, it's a trap because
With
a lot of
Russians,
access to newsmakers and refusing to give you access is a trap because it's a trap where a lot of Russian journalists lay down.
How is it a trap?
You know, if you're a political journalist and you want to gain access to very important newsmaker, and somehow this newsmaker or his press secretary said, "We do not like what you are publishing about us. You have no access to this newsmaker at all. Please go away." And we saw it. And then journalists began to ask, okay, I will not publish this and that, but I do need to gain access to this newsmaker, please, please. And then we began to deal with each other, and journalists, it's dirty journalists, it's corrupted journalists.
Okay, so there are certain signs you need to look out for. They will be taking your liberties, not all at once, but piece by piece, so that you will kind of get accommodated to this gradual erosion of your rights and liberties, and they will create artificial scarcities, like deliberately putting 100 of you in a room designed for 50 people, so that you fight amongst yourselves. And not, asking the questions you should be asking.
At a press briefing.
Yeah, at press briefings.
Yeah.
And no cameras and that sort of thing. But just keep in mind that, these people will never say anything remotely interesting on record. And the least informative coverage comes from inside the Kremlin pool. Because these people are under strict non-disclosure agreements, and
these are journalists who are assigned to cover the Kremlin full-time. I just want to clarify,
Yes.
And they're under non-disclosure agreements?
Well, we had such example. For example, a month ago, the most respectful Russian media published at once this same news article, letter by letter. It was absolutely the same. And when we asked why does it happen, they say, we were at close meeting in Kremlin administration. You are excluded from Meduza, from this group. So you are feel envy, and we are in excess with newsmakers and Kremlin administration. So we published their news, and nothing happened. It's normal to publish the same news article in 12 newspapers.
Yeah, these were not some state-owned loyalist outlets. These were, this is how they create division and confusion, even in the opposition circles. So by creating this artificial scarcity of access to the Kremlin, they completely had all the media, not just the Kremlin-owned media, but the few remaining independent ones. They were literally puppeteering them into repeating their agenda, and that's how it works. And our American colleagues do not fall for that. If you are refused access to the White House, well, then don't bother.
The wall will not be built in 1 hour. It's another brick in the wall every day.
All right, we have time for a couple questions. Up here? Right here. Can you write? Yes, right there. Mm-hmm. The black jacket.
So if you're a consumer of news inside Russia, do you have access to other international and American sites, or is it being blocked? I mean,
no, it's absolutely, it's open for now, and you have access to any site you want, except those who was put into blacklist of main Russian watchdog.
Government watchdog.
Governor, yeah. So you have access to every article you want, but frankly, you can see it by here. I am speaking perfect accent, almost without English. So, and most Russian people do not know English as good to read in it. Okay. So they have an access to every news site they want, but almost totally in Russian.
Yeah, this comes from my personal professional experience, because I was running a website that translated basically every New York Times op-ed into Russian until the New York Times raised their syndication fees so high that we couldn't afford it. And yes, there is a website in Russian that translates most major foreign language outlets into Russian. Not just one. There are many amateur projects on the social media that translate articles and op-eds and book extracts and essays into Russian. And it's the website I was running. It was state-owned, completely uncensored, and it's one of the most popular news websites in Russia. And at some point, we realized that it was also a major source of intel for the Putin's administration.
How so?
Because they, so this is how it worked. The agency I worked for, it had a business-to-consumer side, like a news website, a business-to-business side, like consulting and events and management, that sort of thing. But it also obviously had a business-to-government side, one of which was providing Putin with daily briefings with daily clippings from the foreign press. But at some point, it was a very there was a lot of tension between the agency editor-in-chief and the Kremlin's administration, and the agency refused to do that. And they relied, the Kremlin, people in the Kremlin, Russians in general, are very curious about what the world thinks about them, which is why we so obsessively read it, the translations from the foreign media, which is why these projects are so popular. But also, the same goes for people in the Kremlin, and they were obsessed with Russia's standing. So every morning, they on Putin's table, they delivered a folder with clippings from the foreign media, and they attach these bookmarks, like Post-its, in red, yellow, and green. Red for negative coverage, yellow for neutral, and green for positive.
So it's the best way to answer Putin or to make a revenge, not to publish a word about Putin for a week, for example. He will be in a panic.
Yeah, it's like, oh, so now we are irrelevant. Yeah, it's the recognition that he craves.
Welcome. Given the nature of your disclosure, aren't you concerned about your careers, if not your lives, when you go back?
Well, my career is over already. No, I'm not particularly concerned for my safety because I'm not saying anything that's particularly damaging or revelatory. I know it's public knowledge. The things I'm saying, it's public knowledge. I'm not revealing any state secrets. And hopefully it's that, and maybe I'm too public, and I'm nearly not as brave as many of my colleagues who are really out there. They are risking physical harm every day of their work.
My journalists put their lives and health on risk working inside Russia. But what about me? I traveling in Russia and back very openly. And frankly, I am, as far as I understand, I am in the gray zone because in Kremlin administration we have one person who is in charge of TV and newspapers, and one person who is in charge of internet, Russian internet news outlet. And we are neither TV nor Russian internet. We're in the gray zone. And maybe because of that, I'm out of their attention focus.
Also, one thing I would add is if you've taken anything away from this panel today is that it's not, I mean, Americans tend to focus on journalists, Russian journalists who are killed or beaten up in some way, which is horrible. But the more widespread harm is taking away their daily bread and their ability to earn their daily bread, and by doing journalism and forcing them out of the field because they close outlets, because they make work impossible. And you have a fine journalist here saying my career is over, which is a horrible statement. Next question.
Does the average Russian know that the media that they're consuming is propaganda?
Can you say it louder?
Does the average Russian know that the media that they're consuming is propaganda?
Oh, I have some.
Does the average Russian know that the media they're consuming is propaganda?
You know, thank you for the great question. It's very complicated because, you know, Russians were under aggressive propaganda for 2 or 3 years since Crimea annexation, you know, and now we're in the face of public apathy. People just do not want to know where they are. They just want to stay in a comfort zone because TV and newspapers and all these media, they yielding so loudly, so hysterically that now Russian audience just do not want to know anything. They just want to look at the mirror and see a mirror, see media like a mirror, who reflects their point of views, nothing else. They just do not want to know nothing about catastrophic events, about political issues, about nothing. Just some kind of entertainment, some kind of real good news, or some kind of, for example, heavy rain in Moscow. That's all, unfortunately. And we're trying to fight this apathy with some kind of making explanatory formats or to develop explanation in journalism.
Okay, so it really depends on which poll you look at. And Russians in general have a amazing capacity for doublethink. You can talk to the same
double thinking is
yeah.
our best feature.
So it's a paradox of propaganda. In order for it to be effective, you have to completely ramp up the tension. You have to scream louder and come up with more and more outlandish claims. But at some points, it just stops being effective because people just tune out. There's a certain point when people just stop caring about this constant screaming. And there's also one of the weakest points of Russian federal coverage. And there's a lot of nuances here, by the way, because the farther you move from Moscow, the more different the media landscape is. And on the regional level, the dynamics are very different. We are talking what we are talking now when we're talking about Russian media. We're talking about news outlets with their editorial offices based in Moscow and general interest covering politics, etc. Okay, so here's an anecdote of how the propaganda works and how people believe in it. There's a building in northern central Moscow which hosts the All Russia State Broadcasting Company. It's a media conglomerate that includes TV channels, radio networks, etc., etc. And this guy I was talking about earlier, this TV host, Dmitry Kiselyov, he was confronted on his doorstep by an ultra-loyalist group who accused him of being a Trump shill because he was spending so much time talking about Donald Trump on Russian TV, ignoring the domestic issues. This is a general sentiment in I think in Russia now, that Russian TV spends far too much time covering Ukraine, Syria, the United States, the Trump administration. But not Russia.
Okay. I think, will you kill us if we do one more question? I know we're out of time, but can we do one more? Yeah, really fast, real quick. Sir?
Our administration has a lot of consternation about leakers. Are there leakers in the Kremlin?
Oh, yeah. Of course. And I think I think it's damaging to both the American coverage of Russia because most of the, I'm sorry to say, but most of the coverage of Russia I've read in the American press was just atrocious. It's based on clearly biased and anonymous sources. In Russia, it's just the officials never say anything remotely interesting on record, but they will always gladly tell you all kinds of things off the record because they have a clear interest in that, like damaging an opponent or getting the word out, or they're using you.
Did you have a response? Okay. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.